Nice. Hi, everyone. How are we doing? Richard, hopefully that's answered the question about the sound. Hi, everyone, and welcome to WebinarJeo University, a special training session with somebody that I count as a very, very good friend of mine. Richard, I'm glad it answers the question. Patricia, great to see you. We are very, very lucky to have our special guest on with me today. I'm going to do a proper introduction to Rich. I just wanted to let you guys know there's just over 100 people on the call, which is fantastic. We had about 300 people register, so it's about right in terms of the numbers. I'm sure a whole bunch of people will flood in, as is always the case. We set it in our diary, and then it pops up with a reminder, and we're always busy doing something else. I'm guilty of that, so I know that I'm watching those numbers go up right now. I've got some really special announcements for WebinarJeo, some amazing technology advances that are coming through within the next 10 days. But that's not what today is about. Today is a pure training session, and today we're actually lucky to have one of the best webinar trainers in the world, a gentleman who I count as a personal friend, somebody who's done hundreds of thousands of webinars, somebody who's coached on webinars, somebody who has run sites dedicated to webinars, somebody who's even written a best-selling book on webinars and how to run them. I'm extremely excited and honored to be able to introduce you to this man. As I said, he's a friend of mine. He's been running the JVZoo webinars since they began, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Rich Wilens. Now, I'm going to hand over the presentation to Rich. Rich is standing by. There's going to be about 10 to 12 seconds as Rich picks up the presentation, and he's going to go straight into it. So I'm going to pick up my pen and paper. I'm going to be right here. I'll be in the question box. Dave, if the video's not there, maybe just do a quick refresh, mate. That might refresh the screen for you. I'll be here in the question box. Rich is not going to be answering questions during the presentation because he'll be going all the way through. He's going to come back at the end. Barry, great to see you. Marshall's in the house. Awesome, guys. I'm going to hand over to Rich Wilens. It's an absolute honor for me to do that. So there'll be about 10 seconds where Rich picks up the presentation and he'll be back on with you. All right, guys, right with you to Rich.
Work. You have video and audio. Yeah, I can see. Here comes Rich. Can you hear me? Testing 1, 2, 3. We have you. So you can hear me, huh? Well, that's good. So let me make sure that you can hear me and you got me and we're good. And so everybody can hear me? Very good. Well, first of all, thank you so very much for having me, Walt. I appreciate that. Hundreds of thousands of webinars? I don't think so, but pretty darn close. It seems like I've been doing webinars ever since I got into the internet marketing field. I want to thank you very much for having me as part of WebinarJeo. It certainly is a privilege and a pleasure. I just want to make sure that everybody can hear me okay. So can you just go ahead and type into the question box that you can hear me just fine? So if I need to adjust, I will, and that you can see my picture. So somebody's saying, okay, so Arnold says, yes, audio's perfect, hear you fine. And you can see my picture, that handsome guy right there. Very, very good. All right, good. Well, let me share just one little tip. Usually, how I start my webinars is I have a little kind of a pre-show. I usually start my webinars about 10 to 15 minutes prior because I'm usually hosting the webinars and not presenting the webinars. So if you are presenting a webinar or if you are hosting a webinar, I like to open it up a little bit and say hello to everybody, where you from. Oh, Malcolm says I got no orange suit. That's pretty funny. Well, where are you all from? Why don't you go ahead and type in where you're all from, and I can tell you where I'm from here in just a minute. So, okay, Herndon, Virginia. Hello, Erwin. Welcome to the program tonight. And Sydney, Australia. I was in Sydney once back in 1969. Did I just say 1960? Actually, it was 1970. I told a little story. Tallahassee, Florida. Right down the street, Tallahassee. I'm in Naples. Good. So you can hear me okay? That's awesome. What I like to do, and this is one of the first tips, I like to kind of warm up the audience, tell a joke or two, say hello to everybody, just to get people warmed up and get ready to present. Because you can go ahead and you can be either hosting a webinar and getting the audience ready for your guest, or you can be doing your own webinar, and it kind of gives you a chance to kind of schmooze with everybody and, say hello and touch base. So I'm glad we had this time together, and this little tip, it's the pre-show. And then just before I start the webinar, I make sure I hit the record button. It's very important. That's probably the number one tip. You always want to hit the record button before you start your webinar. Otherwise, guess what? Can anybody tell me? You don't have your webinar recorded. So with that being said, I want to say thank you very much, and we're going to start it. So for those of you who are recording this, this is usually how I start it. I know WebinarJeo automatically records, but what I usually do is if I'll use Camtasia or I will go ahead and record the webinar, I will go, we're going to start this presentation in 15 seconds, make it 10 seconds, 5, 4, 3. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this webinar. My name is Rich Wilens. That's me, and I want to thank Walt very much for letting me have the opportunity to share my side of what webinars are all about. I want to let you know that it's a privilege and an honor to be here. For those of you who are here, can you hear me okay? Please just go ahead and say yes, making sure that you can hear me and you can see my screen. And we're going to go ahead and just jump into this training here in just a minute. So everybody can hear me? Very good. So I'd like to welcome Ed Mercer, by the way. Thank you very much. And Stacy and Tony and Erwin and Diane, it's a privilege and a pleasure to have you here. Again, my name is Rich Wilens, and tonight I'm going to give you my take on what a webinar should be. I am going to give you a bird's eye view of what I've been doing for the past 5 years to give you a little bit of an idea of what we're going to do tonight. I'm going to be teaching you the basics of how to create a webinar. It's that simple. They're going to be the basics. You might know this stuff, but just appease me and just keep an open mind, because not only am I going to be teaching you the basics, but I am going to be sharing tips and tricks all along the entire process of this webinar. So you'll be able to just follow along, and I'm telling you, you'll get a great grasp on how you can structure this webinar. Now, I'm also going to teach you how to make the webinar flow. And it's what I like to call using the perfect format, or a proper format. And what that does, once it's structured and you use this format, it turns into not only a smooth, polished presentation, but you will convert more of your attendees and turn them into sales. And that's the important thing about doing a webinar. Now, there's a couple of different kinds of webinars. You can have an informational webinar. You can have a sales webinar. You can have a webinar as just strictly training, which is what this is. There's not going to be anything for sale tonight, but if you do stick around to the end, I am going to give you a little bonus that I've put together that will guarantee that once you start doing your webinars, you are going to have a better chance of converting and closing more sales. And throughout this entire presentation, I'm going to give you some awesome tips to make your webinar shine. So, give you a little bit of an idea. Walt mentioned a little bit of the book that I wrote. If you can see the screen, it says 50K Webinar Blueprint, how to make 50,000 plus on webinars and the successful marketers who have done them. And my first book, actually, on internet marketing was Inside the Minds of Online Marketing Millionaires. Now, those books go hand in hand with each other, because once I started with JV Zoo back when we first started this in 2011, in fact, it was December 2011, I got the opportunity to meet all of these people. Matt Basic, who, by the way, I'll see tomorrow in St. Petersburg, as I'm going to be attending a Speakers Empire weekend. Colin Terrio, who is a solid copywriter, one of the best. Dr. Ben Atkins, Mike Filsame, who originally was one of the first people we did a webinar with on Webinar Swaps. Mike Lance from Warrior Forum. We don't harbor. We're friendly enemies. Frenemies, they call them. Armin Moran, Reed Florin. You have an idea. 50K Webinar Blueprint is a book that is going to tell you and share with you how you could successfully structure a webinar and make up to 50,000. And as a bonus, and I'm going to share this with you right now, I'm going to give you That's right. I'm going to give you the digital version here tonight with the marketers who have done that. It's going to be part of my bonus, and I'm going to give that at the end of this webinar. So thank you very much again for attending tonight. There's a lot of different styles and formats. I had to learn the hard way. I learned that by experience. I've done over 400 webinars, of which 350 of these webinars were different products, different styles, different subjects, training, not training, sales. It's also given me the experience in many different formats. And I want to let you know that the formats that I've done and what I've actually learned from doing all of these webinars has really given me the experience to actually teach this now. Now, at the end of this presentation, you're going to have not only a great basis for a perfect webinar, but I am going to be giving away a copy of the interviews I did. Plus, I am going to be a lot of little surprises. You'll be able to get those at the end of that. So I understand there's a lot of buffering. Are most of you hearing me okay? Are we doing all right? Or I see this in the question box. I want to make sure that either everybody can hear me, or for most of you, it's really terrible when you give a webinar and you're only talking to yourself. And the answer is no, I'm not on Skype. Comcast. Okay. All right, so if it's all good, everybody's, all right, well, if it sounds excellent, all right, no buffering, perfect. Well, then I'm going to go on. That way I don't think I'm talking to myself. So give you a little bit idea about me. That's me. That's my website, richwilens.com. I have 40 years experience in marketing, sales promotion, sales training, management, advertising, all kinds of media, including print, television, cable, radio, and publishing. I was a radio disc jockey. I started at WKNR in Detroit in 1966 as an intern and worked my way up all the way to the Bay Area in San Francisco, where I worked for not only KSFX, which was the disco station. I was the disco god. They used to call me Rick the Stick, the mix master. #1 disco disc jockey in San Francisco, and then I used to spin all night long at one of the major discos called Studio West. So anyway, I hosted my own radio show. I'm an author and an expert on internet marketing and webinars. I work with the top leaders in internet marketing, and I'm currently working for JVZoo, where I handle all of their webinars as well. As for being a public speaker, well, you know, that's what I'm training for. I've been public speaking all my life, but yet as we continue to learn over and over again, I'm going not only to my mentors, which is Dave Van Hoos at Speakers Empire and James Malinchak. So not only will I be polishing my speaking skills up, but I'm also attending Brendan Burchard. You should always learn. Even at 63 years old, I have to tell you, I am not done learning. So the more I learn, the better I'm going to be. But what I do know is I do know that I am the expert in webinars. So just to give you an idea, that's my beautiful relationship over there. Her name is Marie. That's me on the top. If you look at the bottom, that's E. Brian Rose, EBR, and myself. You'll see some of the books that I've written on how to host a webinar, 10X your webinar, overcome objections, everything webinars, and 50K webinar blueprint. Now, we put on an event at JVZoo every year called Marketing Mayhem. Just to give you an idea, last year, if you take a look at the picture on the bottom, you'll notice I've lost a ton of weight. That's my son all the way on the end with the Alabama hat, and I have the Alabama hat over there. I'm third from the left. That's Brett Michaels from the group Poison. He was the featured artist that year. The first year we had Coolio, and then we had Vanilla Ice. And then we had Flavor Flav, and we went through this rap thing where last year we did Brett Michaels, and this year I'm hearing all kinds of rumors. Have you heard of Guns N' Roses? Well, they definitely won't be there. But, okay, fine. Over at the top, on the top right, that's E. Brian Rose, along with Matt Basic and myself. The three guys on the left, those are, we call them the clowns from JVZoo. That's Brian Zimmerman, Chad Castleman, and EBR. And then there's the four of us who started this company in the beginning. That's Zimmerman in the middle, and there's Fat Rich, and EBR, who's dressed like the guy from Miami Vice, and Chad Castleman. So now that we got that all out of the way, these are some of the people who I have hosted on webinars. And just recently, and you'll be able to get this book, this 50K webinar book. You see John Rhodes at the top. That's Sean Donahoe, Daniel Hall. There's EBR with my book. Melinda Martin, Omar and Melinda, the JV power couple. There's Reed Floren at the bottom in the middle, and there's Delilah. I love calling her Darla, and James Knight. So for those of you who know those names, they are just internet marketing rock stars. Some of the other people who I have hosted is Ben Atkins, James Malinchek, James Jones, Harlan Kilstein, Willie Crawford, Jay Boyer, and the list goes on and on. So with that being said, this was JVZoo and Webinar Swaps before JVZoo had originally started and has become what it's become. And for those of you who don't know what JVZoo is, it's a digital marketing platform where we bring together affiliates and people who create products, and affiliates mail to their list and sell these products. So if you haven't checked out JVZoo, JVZoo is an awesome place for you to do some great internet marketing. This was Webinar Swaps. This preceded JVZoo. This is what Webinar Swaps looked like, and Webinar Swaps turned into JVZoo, and we kind of let Webinar Swaps go by the wayside, and it became JVZoo Webinars. So that's what we're doing now. So with that being said, if you take a look, these are all of our webinar replays. Now, they're old. These webinars have been on the JVZoo website for many years now, but just to give you an idea, I've hosted all of these webinars, and you could actually see these replays. Now, whether you have, whether you have, I don't know if the buy buttons still work or not, but if they do work, you can still learn information from these webinars. So go on there. It's like email marketing reveal. Yeah, it's from 2011, but that was Mike Cowles. And there you have Mitch Carson and Dr. Ben and Ricky Mataka, who's awesome when it comes to doing software. So anyway, Mark Thompson and Sam England. Just an awesome, there's probably over 300 of them, and also on my YouTube channel, which I will get you my link to my YouTube channel so you'll be able to see those. So are you ready? Tell me you're ready. Come on, everybody. Tell me you're ready to start this thing, and we'll get it going. Here, you know what? I'm going to type in, are you ready? And now you type in and tell me if you're ready. Well, Barry's ready. Walt's ready. You bet. Everything going okay? You happy with me so far now that I got this out of the way? Ready like Freddy? Ready right now? All right, here we go. We're back to it. All right, let's start this thing. First of all, how do you create a successful webinar? Well, a successful webinar starts with preparation. And the first thing you have to do is that you have to have something you're going to sell or something you're going to teach. So you must have a product or a service, or you must be prepared to teach whatever it is that you're going to teach. Now, for those of you who are on WebinarJeo, I think that it can become a bit overwhelming, especially if you don't know how to do a webinar. You've been on webinars, you've seen webinars, and they're all over the place. Some webinars have structure, some don't. Some do it this way, some do it that way. And then when it comes time to doing it yourself, you're just overwhelmed. Where do I start? What do I do? How do I do it? How do I properly put it together? Do I put it on a PowerPoint or a keynote? Barry says he's doing his first one tomorrow. Ed is saying he did a black and white, not just black. That's pretty awesome. I prefer to have some graphics. If you take a look, you'll see that I've got some graphics on there, and it just kind of breaks it up. It's called pattern interrupt, and that's a technique that I'm going to share a couple of techniques with you tonight. We're not going into it 100% because it would take hours among hours to teach you everything that I know about webinars. But when you leave here tonight and the bonuses that I'm going to give you, you're going to have an awesome start. Now, one question I'm asked, do you pre-record just in case something goes wrong? You have a backup? Absolutely. Now, one of the reasons why you do pre-record, and this is a very key term, it's called evergreen, an evergreen webinar. You always should have a webinar ready should something go wrong. So, for example, if this would be, something would go wrong, like we had a glitch in the beginning, you could automatically switch to a recorded webinar, which is basically the same thing. Now, this webinar is going to be in your archive, so you'll be able to check it out at any time. So what you can do is not only do you record your webinar, you can upload your recording, and you could use the hybrid mode, especially with WebinarJeo. So that's something that Walt has created, this wonderful platform, and I'm certainly glad to be part of it. So identify your product, know what you're selling in your webinar. That's something that's very important. Identify your webinar topic. Your topic should focus on a specific problem that your audience is struggling with, because after all, everybody has problems, and you need to relate to that. For the people who do attend your webinar, they have the same problems that you can solve. And as long as you know you can solve them and you can answer their questions and not only solve them, but help them make some money, they're going to buy your product. And what else is very important too, and I try to stress this a lot, is that you need to have good support for your product. Okay, here's an example, and I put this down here. If your product's an energy supplement, talking about 3 key ways to get more energy makes sense. Your topic supports the eventual sales pitch you're going to make. So remember, everything has to relate to each other. Everything that you do on your webinar should be relating to each other in that personal, that part of the webinar. I call them little sections, and we're going to talk about how to section out your webinar here in just a minute. So 3 key ways to get more energy every day. It makes sense. So let's go. Here's how you create your webinar content. It's always good to create a script for your webinar. And then you'll use this script to create the presentation slides that you can put in videos, links, and present your information. For example, I use PowerPoint. If you're on an Apple, I believe it's called Keynote. What I do is I go ahead and I script out exactly what it is that I'm going to say, and I script it out by not only writing it out, but then I refine it by using bullet points. That way I can use a bullet point, and I could go ahead and I can add lib, or at least have a direction of which way it goes. And you don't write everything on your PowerPoint and then just go ahead and read it, because otherwise, why wouldn't you just have a PowerPoint and read it? Even though it's good, and there's going to be a couple of slides here where I have written everything out, it's very important that you just do a little bit like create your webinar content. And then you can talk about your webinar content. And if you have a script, in case you get lost, you could always go back to your script and you can just pick it right up. So, to have a successful online webinar, you have to have a proper title. A lot of people don't have a proper title. How many times have you gone onto a webinar and how many times have you gone on a webinar and your title wasn't really all there? You know, it wasn't compelling. And it wasn't, it just didn't get people to join your webinar. For example, a good title would be 3 proven methods to boost your daily energy by 30% or more. That would be a great title for a webinar, especially if you're selling a product, or you're selling an exercise program, or you're selling something that will increase your daily energy by 30%. Now, what are you going to talk about? Well, you're going to talk about these methods. You're going to teach all 3 of these methods, and you're going to offer them what I call, you're going to offer them value. You're going to offer them information that they need so they can make the right decision, because everybody needs to have the right information to have the right decision. You either have a demonstration as part of the presentation, and you make sure that you highlight the key points and information. Now, don't just copy your script again to the PowerPoint slides, because that's way too much reading. But what you want to do is you need to present facts, advantages, and benefits. Facts, advantages, and benefits. It's a basic sales tool, but once you do, you establish your fact, you tell them the advantage of that fact, and you offer them an advantage. And you follow up with something like, that is what you were looking for, isn't it? And that's called an open-end question. And there's another little tip, too, that I just gave you, how to overcome an objection. So, are we all good? Is everybody with me? Good. It's always good to keep your audience engaged. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of a break, and I'm going to say, hey, how you guys doing? Are you enjoying this webinar tonight? Go ahead and type in yes. We're good. I like that. Thanks, WDJ. It's going great. Thank you all. Barry, awesome. Okay, good. Look at that. I'm glad everything is going okay. You want to create moments throughout your presentation where your audience has something to do. You know, I wish we took a little bit of a quiz or a poll. In fact, let's do that right now. Sometimes you can actually upload a quiz or a poll where you could actually get people's input immediately. For example, how many of you have a webinar already prepared? Go ahead and type in a 1. Just type in 1 if you already have a webinar prepared. Or yes, that's good enough. I like to do 1, so I'm going to mix it up. That's how I get you engaged. Very good. How many of you don't have a webinar yet, but want to have a webinar and are preparing it right now, and you're very close? Go ahead and type in a 2. That's how we get people involved in your presentation. Oh, there's a 2. There's Tony. Okay, Dirk. Awesome. Eileen, great. Well, that's what we're here for. This is going to give you a little bit of structure on how to do a webinar. Now, when you're doing a webinar, instead of just having your product, which is at the same retail price, what you want to do is make a special offer. So let's say, for example, you've got a product or a service that you usually offer for $995. Okay, well, instead of $995, which is your normal retail price on this webinar, and just for Walt's customers only, and Walt's list, and Walt's, I'm going to make it $297. Yay! Do you not agree? Bonuses, price reductions, or making the product available at a special price to the attendees only will create action. And it also creates scarcity. When you have a call to action that creates scarcity, you have more sales. That's another little webinar tip for you. Do you not agree? Go ahead and say yes. Oh my God, I sound like Alex Mandosian now. Is this a phone? Yes. Can you say phone? Phone. Yes, Alex, it's a phone. Who knows Alex Mandosian? This is Pattern Interrupt. Okay, fine. This is flashing back to a webinar, a program I saw Alex do. So anyway, we're all good. We're going to continue on. Now, you're going to need a good autoresponder. So how many of you have an autoresponder? Anybody have AWeber? Constant Contact? What are some of the other ones? Entreport? Anybody? Yep, AWeber. Okay, good. MailChimp. There you go. There's many ways to not only promote your webinar, but I always recommend using an autoresponder. GetResponse, that's good. JVZoo sponsors GetResponse, or not sponsors, that we are an affiliate for GetResponse. So for those of you who are on JVZoo, you could go on there and get a GetResponse account. So you can use an autoresponder to promote your webinar to your subscriber list. Now, I know you've heard this before. It's all in the list, and it's exactly true. I mean, if you don't have a list, you're not going to make any money. Now, how do you get a list? Well, I'm going to share with you that. You become a list builder, and how do you build a list? You become a webinar. You present webinars, and you do that by using affiliates. So you can also promote not only with affiliates, but you can promote it to your own list. And anytime you add something new, or if you want to do some special training, you can use your autoresponder not only to promote to your list, but once you build a list, you can promote other things as well, because that's how affiliate marketers and internet marketers make money. They sell other things other than webinars. But tonight we're talking about webinars, and you must have an autoresponder, and you must have an autoresponder that will deliver your mail. I mean, if you have an autoresponder that goes into the spam, it's not going to do you any good. And all you're doing is wasting a whole bunch of money and wasting a whole bunch of emails. So a good autoresponder is beneficial to you. I use Aweber. You know what? It's better than most. It's not the best, but I haven't found anything really better than that. So for those of you who use Aweber, that's about the best as you're going to get. Now, we were talking just a minute ago about affiliate marketing. An affiliate is somebody who will not only present your webinar to their list, but you'll also split the profits. Now, we were talking about an affiliate and being an affiliate marketing. Most of the time, if you affiliate with somebody, or JV, joint venture, you usually split whatever it is. So the price would be, let's say, for example, it's $9.95 or $1,000. Your affiliate would get half and you would get half. So it's very important that to build your list. So you know once you've built your product, you can go out and you can find affiliates that will be willing to mail for you for your webinar. Not only do you both make money, but you get the opportunity to build your list. They get the opportunity to make half the money. What you want to do is you also want to provide promotional materials that will help them market your webinar to their list. Now, that would include an email series, a blog post, videos, banners, anything that you can do to direct them to your webinar. And by the way, as part of the bonus that I'm going to be giving you a little bit later, should you stick around, I'm going to be giving you a series of swipes. A swipe is an email that's already done for you. All you have to do is fill in the blanks. I'm going to be giving you some follow-up swipes, some promo swipes, and how to find affiliates. That's part of the bonus. All you got to do is stick around to the end. Are we good so far? Would you be happy with that? Go ahead and say yes. And people are not saying yes. That's okay. I understand. I'm reading your mind. So, anyway, some of the ways you can successfully market your webinar is you can do it through Facebook. You can do it through Facebook ads. You can SEO, search engine optimization, to your website or your webinar. You can do it through Facebook groups. There's some examples right there that you can see on the screen. Very important that you get out there and promote. I like to promote my webinars to the different Facebook groups that are out there. So, for example, I teach webinars. So when I have a webinar on webinars, I go to all the Facebook groups that are focused on webinars, and I go ahead, I join, I post, I tell them what I do. I don't necessarily promote my specific webinar to that group specifically if they have rules against it, but I do let them know what I do, how I do it, and how you can get in contact with me. So that's how I market it. Facebook is a fantastic way for you to go ahead and market your webinar, and especially if you have a little bit of money to take out some Facebook ads. Now, we at JVZoo not only have a huge list, but we also do a Facebook ad, and a rule of thumb, and I say a rule of thumb, this is how I do that. I usually take the price of whatever it is that we're selling one webinar on the webinar. So, for example, if it's $9.97, I'll spend $1,000 on bringing new people in, because after a while, your list will just get used to you, and you will wind up losing. You'll have unsubscribes, or you'll have people that will not, will not stick around on your list. So you're always rebuilding your list. This way, if you could get, let's say, for example, you spend $1,000 and it costs you $1 per person. If you put 1,000 people to register on to your webinar, and you spend $1,000, well, that's 1,000 people you've just added to your list. And rule of thumb is about 30 to 40% of the people who show up on your webinar. So if you spend $1,000 on Facebook ads alone and you have 30% show up, that's 300 people. Now, here's where the analytics come in. If you have a good closing or conversion ratio, let's say 10%, well, if you spend $1,000, that got you 1,000 people. You have 30% of the people who show up, and you have 10% of that. That means you've sold 30 products. 30 products, and if your product is $1,000, you make yourself $30,000. Divide that in half if you're mailing if you're presenting with an affiliate, and you make $15,000. That's if your product's $9.95. Do the math. If you have a $4.95 product, a $2.97 product, or even a $99 product. You know, people will buy anything. Remember, and here's another little tip. People buy people. People buy on emotions. People buy on feelings. People will buy from you if they like you. And if you can solve a problem for the people who have attended, they are more motivated to buy from you even more. You add scarcity and you add a special price, and again, boom, 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 you will learn not only how to close, but you will convert more. Now, here's another little tip too. You could have the best presentation in the world. It could be awesome. You can have the proper graphics. People are just being educated. They're learning all about your product. And yet, if you don't close them, all they've done was taken up your time, your information, and they basically got something that not only, well, let me put it this way. There's two ways to look at it. You've delivered, and especially if you deliver all the information that people want, eventually they will buy from you, but it's more important to get the people to buy from you now. So don't sell them and not close them. That's another little tip too. Deliver information, give people on your presentation exactly what they want, and then make sure you ask for the sale. So again, if you spent your Facebook ads, you've got $1,000 invested. Take that $1,000. If you have 30% show up, that's 300 people. If you close 10%, that's 30 sales. 30 sales times 1,000. Divide that in half. It's an affiliate. You make $15,000. Use the math again for any price point. We good? Okay. So here's how to structure your webinar. Now, this is very important. I am going to go through this pretty thoroughly, and then I'm going to recap it because it's very important that you structure your webinar properly. So the first thing you do is the welcome and the introduction. You introduce yourself, and you start building your relationship with your listener. Now, this is whether you host or whether you're doing your own webinar. If you have a moderator, if you have some speakers, depending on what you're going to present, what you want to do is you need to establish a relationship with the people who are attending. Very important, because remember we talked about people buy on emotions, people buy on feelings, people will buy if they like you, and the whole idea is to get them to like you. More importantly, you need to get them to trust you, because if they trust you, they will buy from you. So liking you, trusting you, and then giving them the information they need and making them feel like they're making the right decision. So it usually takes about 2 or 3 minutes before the event is scheduled to start. Like I told you a little bit earlier, I like to do a pre-show. But once you get on and you're recording this, the introduction should take no longer than about 2 or 3 minutes, because let's face it, you want to get right into the webinar. Now, usually this is where you'll give your attendees some basic instructions how the event is going to be run. So, for example, if you're going to provide downloads, polls, you might want to mention that up front. If you're going to explain to them what's going to happen during the webinar, how they could ask questions, you want to get that right up front. You want to tell your people what it is that they need to do. You know, don't tell people how to do things, tell them what to do. And that's how you hook your attendees. Tell them what you're going to do, tell them what you're going to share with them, and make a big promise. Very important to make the big promise. Are they going to earn 6 figures in 6 days? Tell them what the value is and why they should stay on the event, and they should pay attention. And usually you should do that right up front. You should be into that. It should take no longer than 5 minutes. And boom, now you're into your webinar. So let's talk about your story, who you are and why they should listen to you. It's very important. Identify the problem that you were dealing with and how you got to this point. Connect with your audience and build some credibility, and usually that takes 3 or 5 minutes. Now, we've all had this experience. Tell me, how many webinars have you been on where the introduction went well, you were 2 or 3 minutes into the webinar, and then the presenter got on and told his story for 20 minutes? Anybody? Can you relate to that? oh my God, well, I started off as a child. I grew up into being a teenager, and then I went to college, and then I bought a house, and then I got married, and I got 5 kids, and next thing you know, you've got 15 or 20 minutes hearing how great the presenter is, and you're going, oh my God, where's the content? Bad, 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 bad. What you need to do is, I might have gone on even a little bit long tonight telling you about JV Zoo and what I've done, but you know what? 5 minutes max. I love to tell you my story, and most of you could relate to that because you know what? I'm not a spring chicken. I'm 63 years old. I'm starting out the third part of my life, and I want to share that with you because you know what? There are guys out there who are in this audience now that are my age. And I just want to share with them, you know what? The internet has no age barriers, whether you're 17 or 70. If you deliver content and you deliver value and you solve a problem, you are going to be successful online. And that's what online marketers do. Social proof. You can always share some quick stories on how other people have succeeded with your product. Now, keep in mind, you haven't provided any actual content yet. But what you want to do is, again, laying the groundwork, building trust, credibility, your relationship. People like you. People will buy from you. So by sharing a little social proof, they'll know that if their product is good for you. Now, you might get people who are going to get off the webinar immediately after you do that. But you know what? They weren't going to stick around anyway, and they're not your buyers. Remember, you want to deliver content, you want to deliver value, but you want to deliver it to people who not only are going to appreciate it, learn from it, but you're going to give them the opportunity for them to purchase. So, soft sell, hard sell, you know what? There's a couple of different ways. I was taught how to sell. More importantly, I was taught how to close. You can do it softly. Some people just don't have that that hard sell in them. They just basically say, okay, here's the product. It's a great product. I hope it solved the problem. And if you want to buy it, great. And when I hear a presenter or somebody who is selling that gives you the option whether you want to buy it or not, they just want to be liked. That's not really selling, and it certainly really isn't closing. So what you should do is not only once you deliver your content, don't ever say, you can buy it or not. I just want to be your friend. No, you need to buy this now. Get your audience early on to say, hey, look, this is something that you need. This is something that you want. Throughout the entire webinar process, you always want to be closing. ABC, always be closing. It is so important to close. And one of the secrets of closing, and I'm going to share that as a tip with you right now, is to overcome objections. Because once you overcome all the objections, there's no reason why people won't buy from you. You should remember 3 things. I'm here, you're here, this is my product. People buy people buy on emotions, people will buy if they like you. You know what? I know you like me because I'm a really likable guy. And I know you love the product because no matter what product I'm selling, it's got to be the greatest product of the world. So the only other objection really is price. And price has never been an issue because if you want something bad enough, you'll find a way to get it. Do you agree? Can I get a yes? Can I get a hell yes? Can I get a witness? All right. Are we all there? Have I put anybody to sleep yet? Come on. Feedback. So good. I'm glad everybody is still with me. I'm just going to. I like that. Hell yeah. Good job, Barry. Amen. All of the above. Dirk. So awesome. Thank you very much. So now let's continue on. I'm glad you're awake. Content. Now, what I like to do is I like to structure my webinars in 3 parts. So I have the introduction. I have the story. Now I'm going to go get into my content, and it's a 3-part structure. And what I like to do is I like to keep my webinars right around 60 minutes and get all of my content done usually in the first 45. Again, there's another tip. Why do I do that? Because the average attention span of your attendee is 51 minutes. You have 51 minutes to not only deliver your story, the introduction, you need to do a presentation and demonstration, but you also have to present not only the information they need so they can make a right decision, solve a problem, and then get ready to close them. That's pretty much how that structure goes. You need to give the bulk of your presentation in 30 to 40 minutes. So you have the intro, you have your story, you have 10 to 12 minutes worth of presentation. And what I like to do, and here's another little tip too. This is a very important tip. After each segment, after each 10-minute segment, 12-minute segment, you stop and you have Q&A. Now, a lot of times people will have a webinar and they will just do the Q&A or wait till the end. Not me. I get rid of all the objections with each segment. So if you have 3 segments, they're all 10 minutes to 12 minutes, then you answer 1 or 2 or 3 questions because, let's face it, nobody knows that there's 1,000 people on the webinar. And usually when you give a webinar, remember another little tip too, is act like you're talking to that one person. Because you actually are. Because that one person doesn't know there's 1,000 other people on that webinar. So if you're talking to them, know your product, but more importantly, know what the objection is. See, most of the products, people will tell you why they won't buy. And if they tell you, that way you can overcome the objection. Now, a lot of times, people won't ask you the questions, and here's another little tip. I have my questions already prepared. That way I could give the objection question and I can overcome it. And if I did that and overcome it within 3 10-minute segments, they are properly prepared because you've overcome all the objections. And once you've overcome all the objections, the only thing you have left to do is ask for the sale, and there's no reason why they won't buy. So the pitch is very important. So what I'd like for you to do is when you get ready for your pitch, you just went ahead and you given your presentation, your 3 10-minute presentations, and then you go ahead and you answer the questions, you overcome the objections, and now it's time for the close. And that's where your sales ability comes in. That's where your sales page comes in. That's where you get ready to present the product. And that should take you about 10 minutes. So as you're presenting the product, you tell them what it is. They've just heard the entire presentation, and now this is what they get. So they get the product. They get whatever bonuses that it is that you have to offer, and then you give them the price. It's that easy. Remember, and I'm going to come back to this in just a second. So, in order to have a successful webinar, you not only do you properly structure it, but when it comes time to your pitch, you should always give a testimonial. I call it social proof. Give a testimonial on how people it has changed their lives, how they bought their product, and how it is that they've not only made money, but how it's changed their life. Now, once you give that sales page, or you've given them the price, or you've given them the buy link, now you can take more questions from the audience. So are we all there? Does everybody understand the structure so far? Does everybody understand what we talked about when it came to closing? Now, one of the things that I'm asking you to do when you close is to reiterate the benefits, provide the buy link, and take advantage of the moment. And you know, the most important thing, and we were talking about scarcity, tell them that this is definitely only for you and only on this webinar, and make it sweet. So if your price, and nobody really likes to discount price. Just the other day, we were in a furniture store, and we were walking around the furniture store, and the salesman came up to us, and he came up to us 3 or 4 times, and he got a feeling that we were about to leave. So as we were about to leave, he came up to us and he said, you know, you see that price there? You could probably take another $40 or $50 off. I mean, that's just what I do. I'm just going to go ahead and let you know that right now. Well, you know what? He was giving us a reason to buy now. And that's what you have to do as well. You have to give your customers a reason to buy now. So if your product is $500, $497, but tonight only, we're going to take it half price, $250. But it's only on tonight's webinar. That's a reason to buy now. And the webinar is going to be shutting down in about another 15 minutes. So if you want to take advantage of this great price, you have 15 minutes to do that. And now that's a call to action. And because you've given them 15 minutes to take advantage of that price, that's scarcity. So once you have all of that, you stick around, and you can always tell when you're on your webinar. You can see if your attendees are still paying attention to you, if they're still here. You can have an idea of how many people are still left. You will know that once the initial flow and the initial sales comes in, it's going to taper off. You'll also know when you're on too long. Remember, we talked about a time limit. 51 minutes is the average time that is the attention span of your attendee. So once that 51 mark hits, you need to be ready with the close and get people ready to buy. And once people are buying, once you've overcome all the objections, once you've answered all the questions, it's time to quit. I mean, I've been on some webinars. How many times have you been on a webinar that's 2 hours long? Oh my God, or 2.5 hours long, or 3 hours. Don't ever do that. If you're presenting a webinar and you've got a webinar, people will not stick around for 3 hours. I mean, they do, but, by that time, they're so tired. Now, there's also an old saying in the sales business, persistence ends resistance. And the longer you can keep them on, the longer that you can drain them, and they'll just eventually buy. Well, you know what? If you stayed on too long and people buy because you've been on too long, those are the people that are more likely to refund. And that's what you want. You don't want people to refund. So let me go ahead and recap what this is. Here's the structure of the webinar. You open. The opening is usually from the host, or it'll be by you. Hi, welcome. My name is, and we're broadcasting. And by the way, we're broadcasting tonight from the great state of Florida, right at the bottom of the state on the West Coast, from Naples. So glad to have you along. That's Naples, Florida, not Naples, Italy, for those of you who think, well, anyway. There's your introduction. Welcome the people. Tell them what they're going to. Oh, you know what? You're not able to see this. Promise what the offer is. Present. Do your presentation. Remember, I told you there was 3 10-minute segments. That's what your presentation is. Your pitch, your sales page, the Q&A. You close, more close. You offer scarcity. And then you end the webinar. I like to do a webinar from anywhere from 75 minutes to 90 minutes, and I'm done. An hour and a half, that should be the max. So, any questions so far? Okay. Well, here's something that I want you to do, and now here's another tip too that I want you to have as we pretty much come down to the tail end of this. You want to set up a test webinar. If you're inviting guest panelists to join you to your event, ask your guests to join you for the test run. It's very important that you test. Walt and I tested it out a little bit earlier tonight. We wanted to make sure that our audio, video, and our slides were fully functioning and the slides were working. That's very important. Plus, you need to test your recording process. You want to record that webinar. You want to run tests on your polls, surveys, questions, quizzes, challenge. You want to make sure the chat box is working so you're able to get a hold of everybody. What I like to do is I like to recruit a wingman, so to speak. What they do is you've got somebody who you work with that can work the question box, who can do questions for you, who knows your product. Some people use a VA, a virtual assistant. Some people use their partners. But this way you're not fielding the questions, and sometimes you see, me kind of looking over at the question box and getting a little bit thrown off. Normally, if I had a VA, they would be answering the questions for you. We talked a little bit earlier about creating a backup plan. If something goes wrong, what are you going to do? Always have a recorded webinar ready to go on, just in case. And if you are hosting, here's something that's very important. If you're hosting somebody else's webinar, find out a little bit about them. Get some short biographies of each of your panelists, and that way you can introduce them properly and get your attendees to know a little bit about them and how what they're like, so you can get them to like them. Remember, it's like and trust. People will buy if they like you. People will buy if they trust you. People will buy if your product will solve a problem for them. So right before your webinar, make sure your computer's working, your bandwidth. Now, I know some of you here are having some bandwidth issues. I'm not sure if it's on my end or not. I am in Florida. So you just never know about living here in Florida, especially with Comcast. Did I just say that? I did, didn't I? Anyway, making sure that you have enough bandwidth, making sure that your internet is working properly. And also, here's something that's very important. Turn off your email, your Facebook, turn off your phone, everything. You need to make sure that there are no distractions at all, and make sure you're plugged into a proper working power source. So if you do that, I'm telling you, everything's going to go smooth. Now, you might have heard the dog a little while ago. That was a rule of thumb that I broke. I forgot that the dog was around, but get rid of the dog. Remove the kids. Remove the pet. I don't mean get rid of the dog, but organize yourself and make sure that everything is going to go smooth. And no, I didn't put the dog out. Marie put the dog out. Turn off noisy gadgets, and don't forget to be early on your webinar. I like to show up about 10 or 15 minutes. Like I said, I like to do a little pre-show to get to know the folks and, kind of relax and get ready for when the webinar starts. And that is if I'm hosting the webinar or if I'm doing the webinar myself. So here's another thing that's very important. And if this is one tip that you need to ingrain in your mind, start your webinar on time. If it's going to be an 8 o'clock webinar, start the webinar at 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 7 o'clock. How many times have you been on a webinar where people say, all right, well, we're not going to start the webinar right now because we're going to wait for some more people to come in? I hate that. And what does that do? Well, I think it disrespects the attendees who showed up on time. So basically, start your webinar on time. I hate it when you have an organizer that starts 10, 15, 20 minutes late. I mean, bad. Don't ever do that. If you're going to give a webinar, start it on time. And also check your sound levels. Ask your audience if they can see and hear you, just to make sure that you're coming across okay. And that's what I have been doing, and that's why I know that you've been saying yes, no. I know some people have had bandwidth issues. For that, I am sorry. But for those of you, there should be a replay, and those of you who are listening, I hope you're getting a lot out of this. Be organized and in control. Introduce all your participants. Don't forget to start your recording, and then bam. Well, what do you think? Are we doing okay? Would you like me to do some more? I still got a few more minutes. What do you think? Give me a little bit of feedback, folks. Are you getting anything out of this webinar training? Dirk says great. Barry says great. Eileen says yes. Mr. Brown, thank you. Microphone types. You're absolutely right. What kind of microphone am I using? I'm using a big one. I am using a Rode Podcaster. It's an awesome microphone. I'm imagining that you can hear me okay. Nora says great training. Kevin says very informative. Ed saying great job. Barry saying hell yeah. All right, yeah, that's very awesome. Well, glad. I'm glad you're getting something out of it. We're on the tail end. Only got a few more minutes left, so I want to tell you what you can do with your webinar recording and how you can monetize that. YouTube video. You can make it, turn it into a podcast. You can get your webinar transcribed and write a book. You can put your webinar, you can write about it in a blog post, or you can put a link to it. You can make an article. You can do it on social media. There's a lot of things that you can do. Remember, repurpose your webinar, because a lot of times in radio, we used to say, once it goes out the air, that's it. It's gone. But with a webinar, and especially if you record a webinar, you can go ahead and put it up on YouTube, and it's there forever. And if you keep your buy button up there, and there's now products where you can overlay your buy button, or you can get your buy button on the YouTube account or on Vimeo or whatever it is that you use, you'll continue to get sales over and over and over again for years. I see this with webinar swaps. Every once in a while, we'll make a little bit of money from something that was done in 2011. So that's what I suggest. And plus, I did these webinars, and not only did I do the webinars, but I recorded the webinar, and I turned it into my book, which, by the way, you're going to be getting a digital copy. So anyway, this is my YouTube channel. As you can see, there's a Shopify. This was there's a Shopify. Here's Ecom, my big fat list builder. I keep all of my webinars on my YouTube channel. Now, granted, I have a Vimeo channel as well, but some people don't have a link and go to Vimeo. But when they go to YouTube and they put in a search, they can find my webinar as well. Now, Walt brought up another good point too. One of the other microphones I did use was the Blue microphone, and that was the one that was. I have my Rode Podcaster on a bar. I forget what they call this. Anyway, it's up above my head, whereas the Blue microphone that I have was on the table level. So one of the questions are you monetizing some or all of your webinars? The answer is yes. Most of the time when I do a webinar, I'm usually selling something. However, tonight, I'm just giving the training because not only am I a customer of WebinarJeo, but I love the product. I love the platform. It's an awesome platform. And not only that, I use WebinarJeo not only to do my webinars, but I also use WebinarJeo to make me a little money. And Walt says, we love you for that. Thank you, Walt. So for you guys want to hear about the bonuses? Because I'm pretty much done. In fact, before I do that, before I give you, well, you know what, I'm going to tell you about the bonuses now. Just for attending, I am going to give you some cool things. I'm going to give you the affiliate recruitment swipes, the emails. I'm going to give you some follow-up emails. I'm going to give you some promo emails on not only how to promote your webinar. I'm going to give you a copy of the 50K book. It's a digital book. I'm going to give you a webinar testing process. I'm going to give you an outline on how to do this webinar. And are you ready for this? I'm going to give you a PowerPoint template. I'm going to give you a PowerPoint template that actually you can plug and play. You can put whatever it is that you want. You could actually use this as your webinar. I'm going to give that to you just for sticking around. How's that, huh? So that's going to pretty much finish it up. I want to say, as Elvis would say, thank you. Thank you very much. Let's do some questions before I give you the link, and that way we can go ahead and I will get you the link to get this bonus. So, do we have any questions before I depart? You're very welcome, Lydia. Very cool. Well, Beth is saying, where are the bonuses? Well, you know what? I'm going to tell you how to get the bonuses. One of my products, or what my website is webinarmentor.com. So if you go ahead to webinarmentor.com, and I'm going to go ahead and type that in. Go ahead and there you go. Head to webinarmentor.com, and you know that's a clickable link right there. And then just go ahead and click on that link, and it'll take you to the secrets to convert and close more sales. And you will get those absolutely free. Well, I guess that's going to just about do it. Just like Elvis would say, thank you very much. And Elvis has left the building, so I'd love to stay and hang out with you. So if there's any questions again. All right. Well, if that's the case, I would love to stay. Thank you so very much. We'll see you next time. Go ahead and email me. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to be with you, Walt. And thank you very much. Good night, everybody.
All right. Thank you, guys. And thank you so much to Rich for joining us. Stan says thanks. Thank you from Esther. We'll make sure that those bonuses come out to you. Rich, thank you so much for your time, man. I really, really appreciate that. And guys, thank you for joining me on wherever you are in the world. Dirk, you're welcome. And there is so much more to be coming out to you shortly with WebinarJeo. Keep an eye on your inbox. Barry, great to see you. We're going to have a whole bunch of new stuff coming to you very soon. As I said, this is not about what's new in WebinarJeo, but keep going back to see what's happening. We've got some amazing technology. I'll give you a sneak peek. We've got new mobile apps being released. We've got Facebook Live integration. We've got a new meeting room style of meeting, and we've got some really advanced technology, and all of that's coming through in the next 10 days. So thank you again to Rich for joining us. It's a real pleasure to have you with us, and our next WebinarJeo University session will not be too far away. We've got Chad Nicely and Jimmy Kinn lined up for the next 2 sessions, so we'll have some amazing guys there as well. But Rich Wilens, webinar expert, and we're going to make sure that those bonuses all get back through to you as well. The replay for this one will be up in your members area in WebinarJeo very shortly. And again, thank you so much for joining me. I'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. Great to see you. Bye for now.